Are you new to fishing springtime bass? Well, in this seminar, I'm going to talk about fishing beds for smallmouth bass in Western Washington. So stick around, there's a lot of information in part one. So my name is Doug St. Denis. I'm a full-time sport fishing guide and charter captain. I'm one of the few guys that does quite a bit, right? I fish in Puget Sound in the saltwater. I do the rivers up north, the Skagit, Snohomish, Skykomish, but I also run bass fishing trips. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I've got contact information, I have cards up here. Today I'm going to talk about springtime bass fishing and what that means. If you're fishing in the spring, you're fishing beds, and I'm going to tell you and show you what to look for and how to be successful fishing for bass on beds, whether it's smallmouth or largemouth, okay? Now, for some of you that are just getting into bass fishing, last year at the show, I did a seminar about bass fishing on a budget. If you'd like to see that seminar, you can go to my YouTube channel, and that entire seminar is there. Okay, so if you're just getting into it, I've got some tips and tricks to help you guys get into bass fishing on a budget, okay? Let's get into it. So, why can't I see my screen? There we go. Okay, that's what we're after right there, folks. Looking for those fish on beds. These are all bedded fish that you're looking at right there. So here is what we're gonna talk, well, let me first say this. When you're fishing for bass on beds, and I know some of you guys might wanna catch and kill bass, okay? If that's what you wanna do, that's on you. I don't do that, okay? I especially, though, don't advocate killing bass when they're bedding. Think about it for a second. You guys are fishing, I'm fishing, all these other people are fishing. If we're killing them off the beds, how long do you think it's gonna take before we ruin that fishery, right? So keep that in mind, but I don't advocate killing them, just catch and release, okay? And a little tip on releasing fish. If I'm fishing a bed over here, and I hook the fish, I land it, regardless of what side of the boat it goes on, always release your fish toward the bed. Don't release your fish on the other side of your boat. Release them toward the bed. Watch it. Within 5 minutes, they'll be right back on the bed. It's the coolest thing, right? You can come back the next day and catch them again. And they'll go right back to the bed, okay? So release them toward the bed. So if you're new to it, fishing beds is also known as fishing the spawn, right? So today, here's what we're gonna talk about. Boat angling, bank angling, okay? Bank does get very challenging for fishing beds. We'll talk about the equipment. Now, I'm gonna share with you the equipment I'm running. Is it absolutely what you have to run? No. Do you have to have certain types of rods and reels? No. Again, you can get a basic rod and reel, and you can go out there and be successful, okay? But I'll talk about what I use. I'm gonna show you the lures that I'm using, and we are very successful in putting fish to the boat. And then we're gonna get into what does a bed actually look like, especially if you're new to this. And then we'll talk about presentation. I'll actually show you video of the presentation that you're gonna use for these lures that I'm gonna talk about today. All right, so bank or boat. Boat access or bank access is actually really difficult on a lot of our lakes, right? I mean, they're surrounded by houses. You know, you might find a park, but are you gonna find beds there? Well, I can tell you, I'm gonna use a lake next to my house, Lake Goodwin. You're not gonna find beds near any of those pier pilings in that dock. You're just not going to. So you need to get on the water somehow. Do you have to have a big fancy bass boat to do it? No, no, you've got options. You can get around on your waters on a pontoon, right? How about a kayak, right? Kayak will get you there. And those kayaks, man, they're making some that are super stable, right? Very stable. You can stand up in them. You can get trolling motors for them. There's all sorts of options. Here's a good one. You can get into this boat right here, brand new, for under $700, right? That's an option. Very, very stable, balanced. Put a trolling motor on it. How about you just make a boat? Listen, I've seen some guys take some 14-foot John boats and put decking in them, and I mean, trick these things out. They're a legit bass boat. Are they doing 75 miles an hour to the next fishing hole? No, but they're fishing, right? They're fishing. Really and truly, I think for you to be successful fishing beds, you gotta get on the water, okay? And I really strongly urge you to get some type of floating device that you can stand up, because height helps see down into the water, okay? The other thing that's really gonna help you see in the water is quality polarized glasses. You've gotta have good ones. I mean, you can go down to Walmart, you can get the Strike King $14 glasses. I carry a couple extra sets in my boat, but I gotta tell you, I get folks, I said, you see that bed? And they're like, I can't see it. I can't see it. And when they put some quality glasses on, they're like, holy cow, this is amazing. So invest in good polarized glasses. And they do make, there are brands, because I wear prescription glasses, several brands out there. I wear Costas. You can get your prescriptions and even bifocals in them as well, okay? It's all about boat control, right? Because once you target that bass, once you see where that bed is, you need to control the boat somehow. So features like spot lock, even they make portable spikes that you could mount to your boat that you just shove into the ground, right? You've got to have some type of boat control, okay? Little tip here, take care of your stuff. Even in Washington State, our UV is very damaging. I mean, boy, keep your gear covered. Don't leave your rods and reels out. It'll damage your line, stuff like that. So at the end of the day, put it all up and cover it. All right, let's get into rods and reels. I'm using St. Croix rods, okay? Now specifically, the Mojo Bass. Now, I've got a bunch of numbers up there, a bunch of letters. It's basically a 6'10" medium light power, extra fast action, okay? Now there's another rod I'm fishing. Sorry about that, it's light colored, is the Victory. It's also a 6'10", same type of power and action, but it's a lighter rod. Now, the Mojo Bass, they're great rods. Do you have to fish these? No, you could get a Bass X rod, a little heavier rod, but a lot less expensive, okay? But these are the rods that I'm running the most. Now, I'm gonna have 1 or 2 reels on these rods. The first is gonna be a Fluger President SP35. On spinning reels, you don't need to worry about your gear ratio as much as you do your bait casters, because you're doing a very different technique and you're not having to take up a ton of line really quickly. So a 5:3-to-1 is totally fine. Now, again, and I mentioned if you're on a budget, Fluger Tryon, the SP30 is great. You could use the 35 as well, SP30 or SP35. That reel is a workhorse. I run them on my bass boat for my clients. The only difference really between the Fluger Tryon and the Fluger President is that, you know that little switch on the back of your spinning reel that you can flip it and it'll spool out? Yeah, the Tryon doesn't have that. But how often have you actually used that feature, right? And the Tryon cost $40. 40 bucks brand new, and they're good reels. So here's what I'm running specifically to target bass in Western Washington, and we are fishing spinning gear. Do you have to? No, but understand that a lot of our presentations are finesse, and it's very difficult to cast a finesse presentation on a bait caster, right? Mainline and leaders. Okay, so here's how I set my main line and leaders up. I'm running 20-pound spider wire, and I'm actually using yellow line. Believe it or not, yellow line, right? Lets the client see it, lets me see it. Doesn't affect the fishing, but we're top shotting it with a 10-pound fluorocarbon, right? And so all that means is I'm taking, say, 8 to 10 feet of fluorocarbon, and I'm using a modified Albright knot to put the two lines together. Now there's tons of videos on YouTube about how to tie a modified Albright. Some people might call it a modified Alberto knot. So just get on YouTube and take a look. I like the knot because one, it's very quick to tie. And two, it's very slim line, very slim, right? The 20-pound braid has a line diameter of about 8-pound test mono. And so the 10-pound fluorocarbon matches pretty nicely with it, okay? Can you fish a lighter top shot? Yeah, you could. You could fish 6-pound. In fact, if any of you guys watch bass fishing on TV, right? You watch the elites or Major League Fishing, you see these guys talk about, man, I've got to really be careful. I've only got 6-pound on there. Well, here's the thing. They're fishing for a lot of money, right? And fishing can be tough. And so they have to go to those extremes. We're not doing that here, right? We're not doing that. So 10-pound is totally good. Now, droppers, because we're gonna be doing some drop shotting, I use 6-pound for my droppers. If I'm gonna get hung up with the weight, I'm okay losing that weight or breaking that dropper off. So that's where I want my weak point to be, right? So 6-pound for your droppers. Now, here's a little tip for you. If you're going to put braid, let's say you got 3 or 4 rods that you wanna spool up. My advice is don't spool your braid all the way from the beginning to the end. Spread it out. Spool your reel at least 1/4 of the way with just plain monofilament line. And then tie a modified Albright knot, put your braid on, because now you can get your braid that you purchased spread across more reels more effectively. I've never seen anybody fishing for bass get that far down into their line that you're gonna be into the mono. I've just never seen it happen, right? But that'll save you some money. Talked about the modified Albright knot. Oh, buy store brand braid. Listen, as an example, since I'm wearing their logos, you think Bass Pro Shops is making that braid? It's being made by a really good company that charges you twice the money when you buy their brand, right? So the braid can get expensive, right? Just a tip. We're good. Okay, so barrel swivels. If in the event you need some barrel swivels, I use size 7. Can you use smaller? Yeah, you can. Usually the terminal tackle doesn't really come into play for much, and I don't use a ton, but I'm using size 7 barrel swivels. You're gonna need some 3/0 offset round bend worm hooks. Again, you can buy your favorite brand. It doesn't really matter. A 3/0 round bend, they're pretty much the same across the board. I use a lot of VMC hooks, but those hooks, I go through so many of them, I just buy the Bass Pro Shops brand, and because they're inexpensive, really, I just use them, and when I'm done, I'm done with them. Now, I am really particular about my drop shot hooks. Can you use one size bigger? Yes, you can. I use a #1, and I find that #1s work very well. In fact, I even hook largemouth bass on a #1 hook, okay? I like the VMC spin shot. The reason I like it is because it has a single barrel swivel integrated into the eye of that hook. And so when you tie it, that hook is naturally gonna orient in the up position, okay? Mustad makes a very specific drop shot hook, but what this allows me to do is tie into the hook and then the dropper off the bottom. I'm not taking my main line and say, tying my hook into the main line as my main line, you know, making my main line stick out a little bit. I'm not doing that. So it's tied into the barrel and the dropper is tied below the hook. I just think it's a stronger tie. You're gonna need some bullet weights. 3/16 and 1/4 ounce, perfect. You don't really need to go any heavier than that. And then you need some drop shot weights. Now drop shot weights come in different styles. They come in cylinders. They come in like little teardrops. I pour lead, so I pour my own drop shot weights. But 1/8 to 3/16 works really well in the springtime. Typically, the only reason I would think that you would want to jump up to a 1/4 ounce is if you're fishing some really nasty weather. So if you've decided, hey, I'm gonna fish this tournament, and it's during the springtime, it's a spawn, and you're getting some really bad weather, yeah, you might wanna jump up to an 1/8. But remember, these fish are on beds, and things spook them. You spook them, maybe your trolling motor spooked them, you throw something that's too large in the water, that spooks them, and that'll get them to shut down. So we want these more lighter finesse presentations so we're not spooking these fish, okay? Ned rig hooks, those are really great, very effective for fishing the beds. 1/8 to 1/4 ounce is about your range. Again, I fish a lot of 3/16, Here are our hooks. There's our 3/0 round bend. There's our VMC spin shot. You can see it's more like a crane swivel type deal in there. And so on the hook side of this drop shot hook, that's where we're tying our main line, and we're tying our dropper on the other side. So it orients that hook in the up position, okay? Bullet weights on the left. You can see I have, these are all weights that I pour myself, but they come in all different sizes, all different configurations. Now, I started using this 2 years ago. Guys, this is the cat's meow. Plano makes this. It is designed for terminal tackle. In fact, every bin, if I flip that thing over, every bin has a label for what that is, and it tells you what those hooks are. Just really great tackle organization. So if you're looking for something that works as a guide, this is great for me, and it's really thin. They're not very thick at all. They're really thin, but keeps you nice and organized so you can get everything that you need when it's time to retie. Okay, this isn't a definitive list, but I think, oh yes, sir.
You mentioned the VMC hooks, the spin shots. Do you use a barrel swivel with that?
No, I'm using this right here. Just tie right into that. I misspoke when I said there was a barrel swivel in there. That's the Mustad that has that. And the Mustad hooks are good. I've fished them for a long time, but these have less tendency to get really tangled up. Because I can tell you guys, man, and typically you're not finding 1 pound fish on beds, but those 1 pounders, they're vicious with your gear. I mean, they get stuff all spun up and tore up. It's a mess. Here's your must-haves. Crawfish. Our lakes have a lot of crawfish in them. 3-inch is great. If you can't find 3-inch and they've got 4s, buy the 4, cut 1 inch off, right? Just cut 1 inch off. Tubes, 3-inch tubes. The fat ones work, the skinny ones work. You'll see here, I've got a picture for you. Lizards. If you can get 3-inch lizards, great. They're hard to find. It's pretty easy to find the 4, but it's pretty rare you're gonna find them here. You gotta order them online. I have to order them online, okay? My favorite lizard is the Zoom. I'm fishing a lot of Zoom lizards. And bearded grubs, AKA creature baits. Again, creature baits can get really big. Try and get the 3.5-inch creature baits, right? And all this is gonna make sense. And again, you can throw Neds, you know, the Ned head there. I tend to stick with crawfish, the tube, lizards, and the creature bait. That's on my deck, springtime, for both clients that are in the boat, okay? And even for me if I'm fishing, right? But Neds do work. And then super finesse worms. And so what this goes to is as you're fishing a bed, you may have a fish grab the bait and move it, and you missed it, right? You didn't set the hook. Or they turn on it, but they don't commit. So what do? You pull that out, and you throw the next bait and see what they do, see if they react. So if I'm going and they're not hitting any of my stuff on the left, but I really want this fish to the boat, now I'm starting to come over here. All right, let's put a Ned on. Let's put a super finesse worm on, right? And when I say super finesse, I'm not talking your standard Cinco size diameter. I mean really skinny, wiggly type of worm, almost like a earthworm, right? Nice and skinny. Baby brush hogs. Again, it's a creature bait. Zoom makes this bait, and they're very effective. Okay, so those I think are your must-have lures, okay, for fishing the beds. That's a lot of information in part 1. Make sure you move on to part 2 to see the rest of this seminar.